Did you ever feel 21 years ago when you made Series 1, when you wrote and made Series 1, that 21 years later, people would still be obsessed with it? It would be an iconic show in the history of British television.
I would be lying if I said I didn't fantasise that, Boyd. That I didn't sort of dream that.
Yeah, fair enough.
You know, but I don't know if that meant that I thought it would happen. But it's like, you know, when you imagine a Wogan interview, you know, when you're 6.
Yeah.
You know. You know.
Yeah, always. What was the initial spark for you and Simon? What was the pitch? What did you want to do? What did you want to create? What did you want the show to be?
We wanted to make a show that wasn't like Game On or any of the, no disrespect to those shows, but the shows of the era that were about people our age at the time were written by 50, 60-year-old white men. And so we thought young white people would be better. No, we just thought that we didn't feel spoken to, did we?
Yeah, I mean, I feel that, you know, particularly, you know, I suppose the TV that I watched and I loved all TV, you know, but, you know, it definitely an experience particularly that was balanced in terms of a sort of male and female experience. I hadn't really seen on telly. I just, it didn't exist for me particularly. I mean, you know, you had the young ones, that was amazing and I loved, and then you had Girls on Top, and it was amazing and I loved. But like, then when any of those girls were in the young ones, it was always about the young ones, and, you know, they might come on and do a brilliant part, but it was like exciting to imagine that you might be able to create something that had a balance and an equality that actually reflected real life. Because in my life, you know, it was all about me. I don't know about you ladies, but you know, so that was kind of what I was sort of interested in doing, and also making something magical. Because the TV I love, like, you know, magic, special TV, always felt like they'd gone the extra mile. Like the opening sequence of Monkey or something like that, where you thought, this could be on the cinema, but it's on the TV for free, you know. And I now it's so different, you know. But I wanted to do something that felt like it was, wow, this is just on the TV for free,
right?
You know,
which I guess is where Edgar came in. Right.
I also wanted to make Monkey Magic.
Yeah, the opening of Monkey was key. Did you both think, the person to help turn that vision, i.e. make it something special, something not like normal television, was Edgar?
Not really. I mean,
we just worked with him on a show for the Paramount Comedy Channel called Asylum, and Jess was involved with that because we had a lot of people that pulled out early on because they felt it was dubious because it was a comedy show about a psychiatric hospital. We were like, what the fuck's wrong with that?
I was like, I'll do it.
We weren't woke in any way at that point in our lives. But we had a real dearth of female performers, and I just worked with Jess in a sketch on for Meridian TV, and I said, I know who we can get. She's amazing. And Jess came in, did it. We worked with Edgar. Edgar wowed us by cobbling together something incredible from a bizarre period of time spent in what was that place in Surrey? It was like a children's home.
No, it was an ex-children's home.
Ex-children's home. I swear to God, I got there.
I think it was an ex-children's home for children who were sort of had special needs as well.
Yeah,
so there was
There
was
were
so
still
dark.
Pictures, like
of the Enola Gay
pictures
on the wall.
It was a really funny show.
We lived in it, right?
I got there early one morning because I forgot the clocks had gone back, and I had to sort of. It was completely dark, no one was there, and I swear I heard kids laughing. I promise
that was me
that's
because
true.
I'd stayed the night there.
Right.
Yeah.
And did you think, Edgar, that it was a Channel 4 Paramount Comedy LWT co-production, but did you think on the budget you had, yes, this is doable, I can turn this into something kind of filmic and with all these references and all that?
Well, I think it was sort of powered along by our own naivety in a way. It's sort of pretty it was pretty an uncompromised show in the sense of, I don't think we really knew, this is where Naira comes in, I don't think we really knew how much things cost. Just like I read their scripts and then I think I probably like added another layer of like sort of complexity to it. So it wasn't the fact that I read the scripts and thought, there's no way we can do this. I thought, so we'll do this and then I can add these things as well. So I don't think we really thought about it. So it wasn't really until making it that we sort of like really trying to kind of put absolutely every pound on screen. So it is something when I look back at it, I think it is that thing sometimes where something becomes ambitious because you're too naive to know, to be told no, or like sort of, so you're just trying to figure out ways of doing things. I think me and Jessica, we both just watched the first 4 episodes, and I'm always like astonished when I watch it of just how much is crammed into every 24 minutes. It's extraordinary, and it's sort of, I just watch it and I can't quite, I sort of can remember making it, but I don't really know how exactly we did it, right. Especially but I don't think there was any expectation of it either. It was, I think maybe at the time it was because they'd been so great in Asylum together. It was a producer, Mafanwi Moore was the person at Paramount who'd said, these two should do a show together, and they'd been so great in Asylum, and they started writing it. And I think then there was probably like about a 2-year period of both of you doing different things and me doing different things whilst they were writing. So I'd read these scripts, and I remember reading the first 4 scripts before we started, and I remember going around to your house where you were writing with Simon in Queen's Park, and I'd written all these notes into the margin of like other little ideas and stuff. So I feel like it was just that kind of perfect sort of collision of 3 sort of ambitious people who don't really know how much anything costs.
So Naira, what did you think of this mad idea? And did you think, oh yeah, this is doable? Or did you have to think, okay, we're going to have to...
I think we just thought we had to do it for what we had. And we probably had, our budget was like half what other comedies were being made at the time. But we were kind of left to our own devices in some ways. Channel 4 just sort of let us get on with it. LW2 definitely did. Paramount certainly did. And it was just like a real beg, borrow, steal. It's like we're making a student film. We were just talking earlier. There were no trailers. We brought props in from home. I was saying to Edgar earlier, I remember on the spider and the mouse cross in the episode 1, I was like, there's no way we can afford stock footage. So I took a spider that I knew someone had to Soho Square, and I took photos of it and said to Edgar that I'd cleared it with BBC Bristol. And he was like, it's shit, you've got to get some proper footage. But that's how we made it. We had a tiny crew. I'd worked at the comic strip for 7 years before that and brought quite a lot of crew who'd sort of started out with me at comic strip onto the show, and it was like all hands on deck. I don't think you can make things like that now. Like there was probably not much health and safety.
It's funny because
we all just mucked in, didn't we?
We were talking before at lunch about how Naira seemed to be the kind of the senior sort of figure on set, and like at that time she was kind of like the boss. And you're like 29 or something. It's like
I'm like only a couple of years older, but then I've been working for like 12 years, and I definitely felt like I was more grown. But honestly, I just thought the scripts were so brilliant, and they were so brilliant. I was like, we just have to pull this off in whatever shape or form. We just have to do what needs to be done.
Let's talk about the casting, because it's hard to, I feel like all the way through, it's hard to imagine anyone else in any of these roles. I mean, Marsha, How did you get involved? And it strikes me that the voice is key, isn't it? You came up with that voice for this character, which, see, that's what took off, isn't it?
Yeah. I think I was in Big Train for Simon before.
Yeah, you were, and you were in Alan Partridge.
And Alan Partridge. And Simon said he thought of me because of one gesture I did on Mark Heap's head.
You tapped Mark's head.
When he was playing the Ming of
Ming
Mom.
the Merciless, yeah.
I don't know what that is. I just turn up, and I read it. I think, oh, God, what's this about? Anyway, so that's how we met. And now the voice, I don't think you auditioned me, did you? I think I came in and you said she's a landlady and she's, lives here and da-da-da. And she had a checkered past and lots of booze and drugs and men.
She didn't audition. Let's just putting the pieces together.
No, you're so wrong, people. I didn't sleep with anybody till I was 23. Does anybody want to talk about that? I have to. The first thing.
That's our headline.
The first thing I ever actually wrote that was on paper for Space at the beginning of the whole, getting it down on paper before the treatment, before the whole thing, was actually a Marsha monologue. I actually channeled kind of Marsha as a monologue. to kind of like because she was based on a landlady that I had living in Camberwell, who lived upstairs and had huge, violent, loud rows with her daughter. And I never met the daughter. I never even saw her. And she did have a boyfriend with a motorbike. And actually, Julia played her completely different from the actual landlady, who was not nearly as glamorous. As Julia was. But she was kind of based in some ways on that person, but also on kind of people who were, sort of women who were very out of. You don't see that many women who were sort of like just owning it. In the way that Julia played her, just sort of owning that in every way. Yeah. And I had a lot of women in various in my childhood who were very like that. It's a lot of kind of wine and.
With the fag and a glass of wine.
Yeah, with a fag and a glass of wine. Yeah.
The Voice was a man, though, wasn't it?
The Voice, The Voice. I come from decades before these guys. I started in 1978 doing rep all around the country and tellies and classic BBC sitcoms and light ent and all that. And I've always worked like a stage actress, really, because that's how we all had to start. Before we were allowed to do telly or West End. It was a hierarchy in those days.
Good old days.
Yes. What am I talking about?
The Voice.
And so, The Voice. I'm that old, I can tell you. And so I did what I always do, which was think of somebody in my life that would fit this bill. And the personality that I chose was my mate, a bloke, Danny, shame he can't be here, who inspired The Voice, because he had the same attitude as Marsha did, so different from me, just he can handle anything. But you have this voice like that. And he still comes to my house. He's doing my plumbing at the moment. And he still speaks like that, and I still answer him like that when I speak to him.
Does he know?
Yes, he came on a space convention. So when I came in and met these guys, I was a bit like, I looked at the script, I thought, this is ridiculous. They're only kids and they won't know what they're doing, and there's no organisation in the room and there's nothing going on. And so I completely relaxed. And so I got this, this ballsy attitude where I said, I'd like to do this voice. And I think they both thought, what the fuck?
I remember very clearly that we were in the American church.
Yes,
on,
in the American church.
On Tottenham Court Road. And the first time I heard it.
Yeah, and I think you said, no, you could do it more conventional, more of a...
I think I said, what the fuck are you doing?
I like The Voice, and I'm doing The Voice.
I loved it straight away. We all did.
So there we are. Amazing. Yeah. Is that the answer to the question?
That is a great answer, thank you. Particularly the plumber, still with us. KATY, twist was an extraordinary invention, and you knew people like that.
Well, yes, I was at university with Simon 30 years ago, quite a long time ago, and knew Jess we were 14, weren't we, when we met? And Twist was inspired by, this is right, isn't it? A friend at university who was obsessed with fashion. She was a real fashionista and always give you these kind of backhanded compliments. That she was very friendly, but with a sting in the tail. And she'd give you a hug and sort of check your labels and go, and sit next to you and go, and check thigh sizes and see that hers were definitely thinner. And, just advise you on perfumes and style. And but that person doesn't know that she's
still doesn't know.
Caricatured in this show. I am right in saying that, aren't I?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And then I suppose the fashion side of things. I mean, I did dress like a fairy and go to nightclubs on Saturday nights. That's true. That was more like a documentary. That episode 6. that was just us.
Yeah.
And they were my clothes, and I did wander around with a plastic wand and grant people wishes, and so and then the kind of costume evolved, and it was all hair clips and stilettos and having weird sex with Brian, of course.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes, Mark. Brian evolved, didn't the character, didn't he, from an original conception to your version?
Apparently, yeah. I don't really remember. It was someone else you wanted. And you couldn't
No, we kind of, because we'd worked with Julian Barrett on Asylum.
In the children's home. He was in the
He
children's
was in
home.
the children's home show, and so he'd kind of been the first idea. But when that didn't come out, I think we tried you and Pete Serafinowicz for Brian.
Gee, I didn't know that. So I
And
didn't
you-
even know. I didn't even know that.
You nailed it. Go.
What was your what how did you see him? Because you brought he's
I don't. All I remember was a little room where we were there, and I looked at the script and thought, this is I'd quite like to do this. I want to bring something not sort of la-di-da artist, but do something a little bit more tortured, I suppose. Was it?
Dare I say it truthful?
Yeah.
Truthful.
But I think the thing that got me going was the sense that he was always thinking about something else. That there was always about 6 things going on in his head, and I found myself doing that a lot. that was a character guide. Sometimes if you're doing an accent or something, you have a phrase in your head just to bring you back home. And if I felt Brian was slipping, I would just do that. It's cheap. It's cheap.
Yeah. What?
I do remember that we once you started doing it, these two they did a complete Brian pass to make it more you. It was like sort of rewritten entirely after you came into the rehearsal. I remember that.
Yeah. No, we had a good chat. I remember we had a good chat, and it was quite exciting. And otherwise, it's just a job. You just turn up, you do a job, and it's a nice job. It's a nice job. At the time, you don't go, this is going to be good. You just go, this is a nice script. Let's do it. Nice people. Finish at 10 o'clock. Overrunning, a lot of overrunning, I recall.
Because Edgar's multiple takes.
Yes.
And endless bloody takes.
Yeah. I feel like Edgar was like the
Whip
Stanley
pan here,
Kubrick
whip pan
of space. It must be unusual to do that.
Yeah, it's all over this.
You remember trying to get the
circle one?
videotape in back over your head in episode 1 of the second series.
Just falling back.
Took a long time.
I remember you would be annoyed every time we would write more juggling into the scripts.
Yes. No, it's been lovely working with you all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was interesting that you did do so many takes on this.
More angles than takes. I
Okay.
think that's the thing. I remember actually we were here watching the first 4 episodes, and I do remember shooting the scene at the end of the first episode, when there's that shot of like the point of view of Amber's sound of her coming down the stairs. I do remember Mark looking at me like, what the fuck is he doing? Like, so there was a thing. I do think like at first, it wasn't until we edited it together. I think Simon and Jess knew what it would be like because we'd done Asylum together. But I do remember it wasn't until we'd edited the first episode that some of the powers that be, especially LWT and Channel 4, would be like, right, we get it. You sort of had to, you couldn't really present the show like without all the sound effects and everything. So me and the first series was edited by Chris Dickens, who went on to win an Oscar for Slumdog Millionaire. So we couldn't really, it never really worked until you put all of the sound effects and all that. I mean, whenever I watch it, I always get kind of the very warm vibes listening to any of the KPM library tracks that are in the show, which that to me, as soon as I hear that, it's like music at the start of the party. I think, that's spaced.
Because it was unusual. I think it's easy to forget that, but back then it was very unusual to have a show that had that pop culture thing going on, that people talking about fairly current stuff on screen, like particularly like the Phantom Menace thing. That felt like to me. Sorry, that felt so unique and exciting that you talk about something so fresh in the minds of people like.
Well, that was interesting because obviously Tim being a comic book fan and artist, and Tim being a extension of myself, was a big Star Wars fan, and we'd become very excited about this new Star Wars film during the making of the first season. And I remember being in the back room at Fantasy Bazaar, the comic shop that stood in for Fantasy Bazaar. Me, Bill, Bailey, Pete Serafinowicz downloading the trailer for the Phantom Menace on dial-up, and it was coming in during the day as we were filming, and watching it and being excited because Pete was in it and it was all great. And of course, in the interim between series, it came out and it was what it was, and so that naturally became part of Tim's life because it was part of mine, and it enabled me to to vent my spleen a little bit.
I think that there was the kind of slackers and there was definitely a precedent in the US, I think, at that time for pop culture reference. Right. So I feel like we were part of something rather than pioneering it, I would say.
But for a British show, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, I would say that would be more truthful, and I think that it and what was perhaps interesting about the way we did it is that we didn't do it in an American way. We did it in an English way, and we were very deliberate and purposeful about that. So we were kind of using that device as part of creating our world, but we were using, and I think which is why it's so loved in the UK and in the US, because we're not trying to be. We're not trying to be anything other than we are, and all the references and the words. And we were always correcting ourselves. When we kind of were writing any kind of dialogue or anything, we were very careful to be very placed and located in Britain, and we weren't trying to sort of be American or copy any of the great kind of sort of filmmakers who were doing that pop culture reference thing. In particular, The Simpsons, which was this show that Simon was devoted to and which I'd seen but not kind of loved, and then Simon was like, you've got to watch Simpsons, and then I kind of begun to understand this, where we were moving to, and when we were kind of putting it all together was this idea that we could use what The Simpsons does, which is basically a device where you adopt and you appropriate shared cultural references within the script, and suddenly it feels very real, but it also then elevates it into kind of a magical place, because you can use then appropriate kind of camera angles and camera work and references, and you can steal or kind of homage, sections that, kind of are really enjoyable in that recognisable way, where Simon says, when he kind of recognised the kind of notes of E.T. in a kind of Steven Spielberg moment, you often talk about that, where you have you hear something and you recognise it.
It's a level of interaction. There's that level of interaction for the audience whereby they're having to put the pieces together themselves. We're not saying, this is a reference to whatever, the Conversation or The Shining. We're expecting people to get it, to make the connection and have that moment themselves. It's like you're giving people access to the show that a more closed off show wouldn't give you, and that's kind of gratifying. I like that. I like not being, I like a film or a television program, not assuming I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
But equally, part of the
because I am.
part of the sort of language that we discussed and talked about was the idea that you wouldn't need to know the reference. Yeah. So you could see it and enjoy it. You could watch an episode, for example, in the second series.
She didn't know any of it.
I didn't know any of it.
There's a One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest reference, and you don't need to have seen actually if you've never seen it or you don't understand the reference, you're thinking, this is so good. Oh, the way that's all, because it all works within the context of the story, and yet obviously if you recognise it. But then it's exciting. But it wasn't an attempt to kind of be American. It wasn't, even though obviously respectfully we loved kind of, that whole kind of Jay and Silent Bob era. We loved everything that, I certainly did love everything that Americans were doing at that time in that way, and particularly The Simpsons, which Simon brought along. But I think in Spaced, it was particularly English, which was what was, I suppose, kind of exciting. Jaffa Cakes, for example.
100%. Was there a big pressure from Series 1 to Series 2? Once you'd established Series 1, it became this, I think, at the very least, a cult phenomenon. It found its audience, and its audience loved it so much. Then for Series 2 to step up from that and beat that and kind of do even more.
I remember thinking that I wished that you guys had a chance to write the second series without knowing what the response to the first one was, but it's kind of impossible, that thing. So it did, by its very nature, get kind of bigger, and I think sort of, I think the thing that was, just one thing to talk about what these two were talking about, I think that one of the reasons that it's an aspirational show, one of the references is it's aspirational, and it's one of the reasons that it doesn't work without Simon and Jess. It's why it's like, I think you said this in an interview about, it can't really be copied as a format because it kind of comes from two writer-performers. And when you take the two writer-performers out of it, what is it? But it is that thing, it's always when people say, would you ever do a film with Spaced? It's something that feels like it's like perfect for the small screen, because you've got these characters of this age who haven't made it, who are sort of aspiring to be something, and then also I think both of you have said this in the past, the idea that this show is what they imagine their lives are like, So it's done in this, especially in the second series, it takes on this even more sort of overblown genre style, because that's how they recount kind of like these stories. So like a sort of a trip clubbing becomes this massive epic. The paintballing becomes a massive epic. Daisy working in a kitchen becomes like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So it was a really great way of like taking things that we loved and trying to put it through relatable incidents.
I think what we thought with the second series, I think Jess and I looked at the first series and what people had enjoyed about it, and kind of almost perhaps wrongly assumed that people really like the capery kind of stuff, like going clubbing or doing the paintball or where they had little adventures. And so season 2 becomes a little bit more, we double down a little bit on that. But there's great stuff to be, when I look at it now and with season 1, I really like episode 2 and 3 of season 1, which is just a bit odd. The party, which is this strange kind of anticlimactic
Actually
kind of
based
thing.
on a real party.
Based on a real party.
Based on one of Katy's parties.
Yeah.
Where she did actually cover everything in tin foil.
Even the outfits, everything. Even David Williams was there covered in tin
Covered
foil.
in tin foil.
Yeah.
tin foil miniskirt, yeah.
So that's why season 2 kind of feels a little bit more adventure-led,
Right.
But we could have quite easily done more sort of character-led episodes like 3 and what have you in season 1.
There was a thing though, and this was when these guys, because on the second series I sort of script edited, and there was something where you guys had done a lot of episodes where you were sort of split up on these separate adventures. And I think the final one that you handed in, which wasn't the last episode, was another episode where it was like Daisy and Tim were split up. And I think I was one of the people who said, there has to be an episode that's just Tim and Daisy. And then that one became, then you wrote very quickly, the two of you wrote the Camden episode, which is my favorite episode of Space, which is like episode 5 of the second series. But that came as a sort of like a result of writing these other sort of adventure episodes.
And I don't know why I'd watched that After Hours, which is a really weird kind of 80s film, which has this device about the keys, and I just thought that would be perfect. That's a perfect device, and it's such an obscure reference as well, which is always exciting when you are when you do engage with space on that level. It's like it's exciting to think, oh god, I bet no one else has got that, and
is that scene that Edgar's talking about, the episode that Edgar's talking about with the slow motion commotion? Is that
slow motion commotion?
I'm calling it.
Boy,
yeah,
you're a writer.
I took that from somewhere else.
Slow motion commotion.
Was that your favourite scene? I felt like on the documentary remember that you did years ago about the whole thing on one of the DVD releases, you said that was one of the greatest days of your life.
Yeah, no, well, obviously, yeah. I mean, one of them. One of the many, Boyd. Yeah. But I did love that. I loved it.
What was it about that? Because that does feel peak space to me, that sequence.
Because it is peak space.
Yeah.
It's just it's the absurdity of the moment, and it was something, and
we're all together,
Yeah, it was Tim and Daisy as well, which is kind of what the show was about. The whole thing, not the whole thing, but that aspect of it had come from a piece of stand-up comedy I was trying to write about that tendency for guys to do that, because I'd spent a summer in New Zealand with Rich Fulcher from the Mighty Boosh.
And Marriage Story.
And Marriage Story. Very stoned, playing slow motion gunfighting for hours and hours on end. And it was, I had this thing of maybe we could turn it into some kind of unspoken thing that happens between guys. And then of course when Jess came into it and added Daisy's part of it being her sort of, the fact that you were very keen to be.
Well, I suppose the episode that we did before was about that. It was about what because I was interested and always have been, in what is gender. That is something that if I'd gone to university, that might have been, my thesis, but I didn't, so it wasn't. So
you were ahead of your time.
Then we
did have a trans character in season 1. Thank you.
Yeah, but not a big fat tranny.
That was Tim's ignorance. That wasn't our.
I didn't say that. You said
we weren't
that.
labelling. That was, some characters say weird things. It's not.
But I was very interested in gender, and I wanted to. And I wanted to explore that with an episode. And we were kind of just riffing on all these different things. What is it essentially? What is the essential thing? And then, we were talking about it when we were then going back to rewrite the episode with the kind of after hours theme about, so we had a kind of basic sketch, which was a night out and them going out together. But we were still trying to incorporate the idea that was one of the ideas for that episode. And then we were just talking about telepathy and kind of and essential gender.
It's based on the whole
essential gender
menstrual
nature.
thing. That whether that's true or not,
I don't know. A fire. I had a scene where you were making a fire in the garden. I remember that. We wrote that, but we didn't do it. But
the guns were an equivalent of this idea that women will sync up their cycles if they spend time together.
And you were saying, and then when you draw a pretend gun, they respond, and I was like, we're going to have a gunfight. We're going to have a gunfight. And it was like, and then we had a gunfight. But what was interesting for me...
This is the writer's room. You get a little glimpse. The chaos.
Then what was interesting for me is that then, obviously because I was there and I was on the night out and we were all gunfighting, I was going to gunfight. So in a way, it kind of undermined then that theory.
But it was cool because
which was good because
it.
I don't think that's necessarily essentially true. I think if you draw a gun,
don't do it.
Whatever, do it. I don't care what gender you are. You're going to draw back, right?
But I like the way that you as a woman, Daisy as a woman, she was able to co-opt the situation to save them. So she got them all to do it, and then she woke Tim up from his torpor of I've been killed, so I have to do this for an hour.
Yeah.
And it was like, now we can go. And it was.
And Edgar, oh my God, how much fun! That was part of the fun of it. Is how much fun Edgar had doing it.
Right.
Edgar,
do you remember
loved that scene, right?
I did love that scene. I think that's my favorite. I mean, there's so many favorite.
When he goes.
Yeah, it's Noodle.
Down on the shutter.
Here's a good showbiz exclusive. Do you remember who was going to play the part of the lead teen before Lee Ingleby came in? Who was cast in it and rehearsed with us? Danny Dyer. He was really good as well. He was really good.
What's happened to him?
He's now a member of the royal family.
Yeah. Now I need to throw him to the audience in a sec, but before I do, I just want to mention the incredible encyclopedia of comedy talent you had on the show. We've mentioned you had Mark Gatiss, Peter Serafinowicz, David Walliams, Kevin Eldon, Paul Kay, Michael Smiley, Bill Bailey, and Reece Shearsmith.
Who's here tonight?
Get him up here, come on.
Come on!
How was it for you, Reece? The whole space experience?
It was great. I mean, I remember it being a sort of... So it was the second series, wasn't it, when we were vying... We were doing League and you were doing Space, and there was an upping of the game of both series, it felt like, because we were sort of aware of each other's universes and what you could do on telly, and I think there was an element of trying to outdo each other, so that's why...
I remember showing you at my 25th birthday. We just finished editing the first episode. I remember showing you and Steve a VHS of the zombie scene. I remember saying, "Look at this." So there was a little bit of one-upmanship, wasn't there?
Do you remember I cameoed in season 2 of The League because me and my then girlfriend, now wife, were walking through Camden, and you just see us in the background.
Quite by accident, yeah. You can look, you spot him now. But yeah, it was a great. I didn't know anything about Robot Wars, but it was nice to be.
I just remember Simon always doing your hump.
Oh yeah,
like all the time. Like
This
just
is why
corksing
Edgar's
himself
brought
constantly.
Reece up because he wants him to do that.
Together, can we all do it
We
together?
wanted Reece Shearsmith to be a performing monkey. Simon to give him the feed line.
And I was passing by, and
Simon, would you give him the feed
We
line?
had to look on YouTube to remember this. So it was, what if we get damaged? The finals are in a week. We might jeopardise our chances.
oh yeah, I had a thought.
There was one entire episode that you wrote, which was binned for the Camden episode.
Yeah, it was
Yes.
kind of like Grease, wasn't it? It was like
That was where there was a bonfire in it.
Danny and Sandy.
Yeah.
We never used that.
Thank you.
But I did. I mean, I think I was pushing towards the end of the second series. I really wanted to do a monkey.
Yes.
Oh yeah, because
I wanted to do a monkey photo. I was trying to persuade everyone that we would make the most brilliant monkey photo. You know,
with
Brian
Sandy
as the
and
princess.
Tippy Taka.
You know, I mean, it's just it would
But
have been
the
amazing.
first
You as
iteration-
monkey. You could have been monkey.
What were you going to be, Pigsy?
Yeah.
Oh,
No, yeah, probably Pigsy. Yeah.
I knew because you're self-effacing. You
Pigsy
go
or the
for that.
bald one.
The
Yeah.
Sandy? No, that would have to be.
Nick. With the skulls, the skull necks.
Yeah.
Julie has no idea what you're talking about.
What are they talking about? God! And can I
First
just say,
iteration of the fight in 5 was a monkey fight. Do you remember? It was
Yes,
kung fu
yes.
before it was gunfights.
can I just
did
point
do-
out
we
that
tried
the
that.
only episode I wasn't in was this one that is the big favourite.
Sorry.
No, I wasn't. You left me at home, didn't you?
Yes.
You all left.
Yeah, briefly.
I didn't like that one.
Right. No, I can't remember.
20 fucking years ago, man. What are you?
What's your favourite line of dialogue?
That's not technically a line, though, is it? It's just a thing.
It's part.
What's my favorite? I was just watching those four. I do like the. I mean, it's so simple, but I do like at the end of the bit with the vulva invite when Mark does the whole speech and someone goes, "So you're gonna go?" He goes, "No, I haven't seen it for ages." He goes, "No, are you gonna go now?" That's a killer joke.
I liked it when Tim and Marsha had a snog. It's not a line as such. I shouldn't say that. Michael's sitting right there. That was just a really funny bit.
I love it when David, bless him, David Walliams says pudding.
Pudding.
I liked asking Brian if he'd washed his sheets and his penis in a very, very sweet voice. I don't think she'd ever said that.
It's
before.
reasonable.
Can you remember one line, Mark?
Now. Trying to think of one.
I know one of my favourites that's you and me is when I knock on the door
Yes,
and say
Father Christmas.
We're genuinely disappointed. They were all killed in a car accident. That's why there wasn't. No, sorry, that was not the right thing to say. I think Tim ended up working as a graphic designer on the new Star Wars films. He designed a few spaceships. What he thought of them, we don't know.
And I think Daisy moved to Broadstairs and got a dog.
I think Twist and Brian went on a cruise somewhere together and carried on having weird
They were
sex.
never seen again.
I think Marsha's probably in a care home, but doesn't realise she's in it. but Daisy goes to visit her, so it's fine.
No, there would be a whole cast of men devoted to me. Well, I left in bed with Nick Frost, didn't I?
Oh, yeah, of
in
course,
the end.
yeah.
Yes, so who knows? Maybe in suburbia, running a poodle parlour.
I think Tim and Daisy were together for a while. You know, I think we had a little gag at the end of the documentary where they come out of the house and they've had a baby. I think if there'd been a third season, it probably would have culminated in them finally,
Possibly.
realizing that their love for each other was was real.
Yeah.
But we'll never know. But I think I like the idea of them getting together but then getting divorced like 5 years later.
I don't like that so much.
Because it doesn't perpetuate the patriarchal order. It means there's some kind of hope of
Do you think
dissolution.
that staying married perpetuates the
Big time.
Okay.
Big time, thank God.
Pause. I mean,
Well, I mean, it's a patriarchal institution, isn't it? I mean, come on.
that's a whole conversation.
The temperature goes up and down in here. It's bizarre.
We did end up watching it all in one go. I think the last time I watched it was we did this tour for the DVD in 2008, and I think you watched a bunch of it with us, and then
I don't think I could ever watch the marathon. I think I had to come
Yeah.
back, so I've never done it. But
we ended up doing it because the hotel that we were staying at had a power cut, and we thought, well, we may as well just watch the whole thing. So we did. We sat there in Austin, Texas, which was quite amusing in
But they were
itself.
showing it at a theatre. That's the
We were there, but we watched. That was the last time I saw I saw the entire thing like you did in one go.
It's extraordinary to be here 20 years later, and for it to be for it to mean this, that this event would be put on. It's extraordinary.
I'm enjoying watching it kind of as an old person. I'm loving it because I'm enjoying it. And I don't think I've watched it. For I can't think when. And so, but to watch it as somebody now who is kind of old, and to sort of look at it and enjoy it for the essential energy of it, which was absolutely youth. Like it absolutely was it was made in youth, it was conceived in youth, it was created by us, when we were young, and we were allowed to infuse it with that energy and idea and newness, and it's amazing because it's all there,
I think as well, we were really fortunate as well to have been able to make this show. I mean, that's what's crazy is I do think about it now in terms of like,
it's quite emotional.
I was 24 when I directed the first series, and I just think like, how is that possible that they let me do that? And also,
you were very persuasive.
In this day,
you got really quite grumpy when you needed to.
It's true. I still do. But the funny thing is as well is that in this day and age, would Channel 4 make the show? And if they did, would it be on like internet only? Would it be on E4 or the iPlayer? It certainly wouldn't be on Friday night at 9:30, which is extraordinary. So I feel like we were so lucky.
Yeah, between Friends and Frasier.
Between Friends and Frasier, it was amazing. I remember we used to watch the show round at each other's houses, and I remember at the start of the third episode with the zombie sequence, the Channel 4 announcer, Friends had just finished, and we'd immediately lose 2/3 of Friends' audience. And I remember just after Friends, it sort of had the Channel 4 thing. It said, "Next up, Spaced, which contains violent imagery and strong language from the start." And we went, yeah!
Also, I have to say, one also amazing thing that did happen 21 years ago as well is I had my son, my first son, who is here today, and who is who is 21.
And this is the first time the two of you, Tim and Daisy, Simon and you, have talked about it in public, I feel, isn't it, for a long time? Am I right?
Yeah,
a long time. Yeah. So I feel it's extra
DVD
special.
kind of maybe tour or something like that,
Not in the UK.
Not in the UK, no, not in the UK.
I think we've run out of time, I'm afraid, because you've got the whole of Series 2 to watch.
Oh, bloody hell.
Which is going to be great. Obviously, thank you so much to all of you for coming and talking about this fantastic, iconic show. And thank you for your questions. Sorry I didn't have time for more. And enjoy Series 2. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.